Get ready to swap the ordinary for the extraordinary with Equal Exchange. This campaign is brewing up a storm in the world of fair trade, empowering farmers and consumers alike.
Next Pitch TV showcases the most innovative equity crowdfunding campaigns for the verdict of the crowd.
I'm thrilled to introduce you to the driving force behind this movement, founder Nicole Vitello. Let's delve into how Equal Exchange is reshaping the global market, one ethically sourced product at a time.
First of all, Nicole, thank you very much for coming on to Next Pitch TV, where we showcase the most innovative equity crowdfunding campaigns for the verdict of the crowd. And I have to say, Equal Exchange really is an odd selection for us. First of all, we're in America. My God, you are a cooperative. It's got what? In other words, the cradle of capitalism. Here is a company. By the way, is it a benefits corporation, or what exactly is the organization?
No, we're a for-profit corporation in Massachusetts, but we are organized as a worker-owned cooperative.
Absolutely fascinating. But
Yes.
rather than me explaining it, allow me to ask you to please tell us, how did you get into it? I noticed you yourself have been in this field, should we say, for at least 10 years or more than that even. So
Yes.
how did you get into it? What motivated is pretty obvious, I guess. But how did you see the whole thing? Let you take over, please.
Well, thank you for having me today here, Ralph. It's nice to get a chance to talk about Equal Exchange through a different lens, which is this crowdfunding idea. So Equal has been around since 1986.
Wow.
Yes, it was. We were founded as a worker-owned cooperative, and that was intentional. And at the other motivation around the founding of the company was mainly to link small farmers with people that are eating, drinking, buying their products, but yet don't have much opportunity to connect, right? Here in the US, we have a great local food scene where people can connect with their local farmers around lettuce, tomatoes, things that are grown domestically. But for the things that most of us consume a lot of, coffee, tea, chocolate, cocoa, cashews, a whole bunch of other products, we really don't have any opportunity to be connected to the people that are growing and producing these things. So Equal started more around coffee, and has since evolved to some other products, but always with a mind towards how can we connect people and growers instead of sort of separating them. And, often the separation can be used for a whole host of activities that end up sometimes disempowering both parties, right? So our whole idea is, as a worker co-op ourselves, we buy from producers who are organized into co-ops, coffee, tea, chocolate co-ops, cocoa co-ops. And then we often sell to consumer food co-ops, which are stores where people are members, right? They pay their membership share. They put their money into their local community by investing in their local grocery store. And so with all three of those things, we really are an alternative supply chain because we're all living under cooperative principles that we all know about before we even start doing business together. So I think that's kind of the hook, right? Is, you have to want to do this work and be connected. But once you do, everybody gets to stay in their wheelhouse a little bit more, right? We're not trying to be farmers. We're not trying to be a development organization, right? We are trying to meet farmers where they are, fairly represent their products, their pricing in the marketplace, and then connect with the people selling those products and not be vertically integrated to do all three, but play our role in this, which is importing, buying in volume, educating about fair trade and organics and supply chains, and then, really getting out of the way and making sure that the products are good and sell themselves under that degree.
I totally love it. Now, one thing, maybe I'm wrong on this. I got the impression that Equal Exchange also seems to provide more than just fair pricing and so on, but a certain amount of, is it training? I'm not entirely sure, for the farmers to help to give them a leg up, should we say, in their production. Is that correct, or is that my?
Well, I would say that more so what farmers really need, in my experience, is not more education around farming, but generally a stable long-term relationship, fair pricing, and access to the market, right? I feel like certainly there are technologies that help, or, coffee rust has been very prevalent. So having access to agricultural extension and other means where farmers can have the best options available to them. But a lot of those options are available, in country or otherwise. It's more the access to resources and stability around their business profiles. Often farmers are squeezed so seriously by the cost of everything they're doing. They don't often have the funds to invest in their own farms, even if they want to and know the right thing to do. Sometimes farmers can't farm organically because they might not have the options to do so, depending on where they are. And so we try to facilitate some of that. But I would say, again, just meeting farmers where they are and providing stability and good market pricing and information is really where we shine.
Wonderful. Now, and most of the farmers, if I see it correctly, are in South America, like Nicaragua, etc. Is that correct?
Typically, yep, Central and South America is where we get the majority of our coffee products from, and also cocoa. We source a fair amount of cocoa from the Dominican Republic also. But we do source some coffees from Ethiopia, some tea from India, Sri Lanka, South Africa, and some spices also from Sri Lanka, and cashews also from Burkina and West Africa. So we're pretty global, but I would say the majority of the small farmers that we source from are typically Central South America. Yes.
Very interesting. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think this is your first equity crowdfunding campaign?
It is.
At the moment, if I see it correctly, it's about 460,000, give or take. That's a pretty substantial response there already. That is very...
Yes, well, especially because it's our first one, and I think it's only been, it's just a 3-month campaign that we're doing. So this was very exploratory for us. But after, we've been very lucky. We do have an alternative capital model at Equal Exchange. It has gone along with the other unconventional things that we do, right? Where as worker owners of the company, we're the ones that hold the Class A ownership shares. So when we have in the past done equity offers, our Class B preferred shareholders are not traditional in the way that they might be in other businesses, right? There's no voting share. There's no guaranteed dividend. The board votes on that. And there's no, big windfall that's going to come from selling the company because the company is not for sale, right? We're a co-op. So, so in the beginning, just explaining, getting people to sign on to traditional equity offers was no easy feat either, right? It was a lot of friends and family. And we have had investors that have been with us for, almost 20, 30 years now, and have really parked their very patient capital so that we can do things like extend pre-harvest financing to farmers. Coffee's a once-a-year harvest. So farmers really need income year-round that is not extended on mercenary terms, right, that they can't live with. So we're often extending money before, a year in advance of the harvest, 6 months in advance of the harvest, and then at harvest time. So that's another way that we make people's capital work for farmers themselves. The one sort of, so we have this democratic structure, right, of a worker-owned co-op. We buy from these great farmers that are organized into co-ops and export businesses of their own. And we have very patient, wonderful capital from mainly accredited investors. But the piece that was missing is, how do we involve regular people in our offer to be invested in Equal Exchange? I mean, you can buy our products, you can engage with us in political activism work that we're doing, but we didn't have a mechanism to involve potentially thousands of, non-accredited investors that could invest smaller amounts and be part of our model, right? And there really wasn't a way for us to do that other than become a publicly traded company, which really wasn't what we want to pursue. So here we are, right? So we sort of stumbled in the back door of the crowdfunding idea. We're not a traditional crowdfund company, right? We've been around for 35 years. We have an equity structure, but we do want to be part of the crowd in a way of like bringing in a lot of people and introducing ourselves in a different way. You know, the grocery and supermarket world is the food industry is a pretty tight world to play in, you know, and so sometimes you got to come in through another channel, and this is our way of doing that. So we've learned a lot. We've met a lot of great people. We've had a lot of great conversations with existing and new investors, and it's a fun space to be in. It feels very freeing as opposed to some of the other types of capital raising.
Well, that's really one of the whole points. In other words, that let's put it this way: what is a typical investment? In your case, the minimum I notice is $500. In a lot of campaigns, it's actually as low as $100. Some, I guess, go even lower, but that really should be the bottom of the thing. Which, however, brings me to my next question: why did you actually decide to make it 500 rather than 100 in that? For a lot of people, if they're investing $100, it's not very much, but ultimately you're building your supporter base, quite frankly, as much as raising funding. So why did you decide to make it relatively high at $500 minimum?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we sort of wanted it to be enough where people were taking it seriously in terms of feeling like they had put some amount in there that was meaningful to them, right? And they, because we're looking as much for the capital as we are the engagement.
Right.
So it's kind of like, what's the amount that feels like comfortable, but like, you know, enough that you're really going to feel like you thought about it, right? And you researched the company and you invested your time and your energy as well as your money, right? So that was kind of one way of thinking about it. And I think also trying to find a way that we could put two types of investors together. You know, I think that's also something we were wondering if that would work in this type of offer, where you have some people that, you know, accredited investors can invest, you know, as much as they want in these crowdfund offers. So can you make it attractive enough where you're not, what's the place where you can put both parties together, right? And that feels natural.
Right. I don't know if you're aware of this, but the SEC has authorized special purpose vehicles about 2 years ago. The important part being that in a regular setting, if you had, let's say, 1,000 people on your cap table, you don't need to bother going to any traditional investor, you might be VC or whatever. They laugh you out of the room. So because, let's say it's $100, $200 or whatnot, typical, oh my God, who wants to have that many people on your cap table? So this special purpose vehicle lumps ultimately all of the small investors, i.e. from the crowdfunding campaign, into a separate entity that is a single entry on your cap table. That is something you might want to consider doing in the future. The whole point is that, as you said, you want the involvement. Yes, you need the funding, I get that. But if one can make the barrier a little bit lower, so much the better in terms of the crowd. So anyway, it's just a thought to consider. Also, in many cases, although I'm not sure it applies for your company, there are a lot of safes being used. I don't know. Are you familiar with that at all?
No.
A safe should really be called unsafe. But Y Combinator, arguably the Harvard of incubators in America, had a problem. They wanted to support highly selectively the best startups they could find with 125K, if I'm not mistaken. But how exactly are we going to value this thing? So your startup is, let's say, a year old. Revenue? Are you kidding me? There's no revenue, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, all the traditional metrics just didn't work. So they came up with simple agreement for equity, SAFE. And the idea was to say, okay, here's the funding. We are going to get this SAFE agreement. It's a convertible note, ultimately. But the important part is it comes with a trigger. And the trigger only applies when there's, should we say, more conventional funding. And based upon those terms, the original investment, in this case from Y Combinator, converts. So it's a very, very fascinating area that you might want to look into, simply because it is giving you, I would say, the best of both worlds. If that is of interest.
Yes, no, I think the greatest part about this is we have had mainly one vehicle for our capital raising in the past. It's worked well for us. It's been very, Equal Exchange has been a good investment for people over time in that it's, we're a steady company with a good track record, right? You're not going to get the ups and downs you are of other investments. And I think the people that are willing to support us know that and know who we are and feel good about those investments. But what's been interesting about this is there is an energy, right, around crowdfunding that is part of where we like to be also, right? I mean, it's funny. I think there are a lot of companies that would say, wow, the dream is to have a few loyal and patient investors that understand what you're doing and are willing to put their money into your venture. On the other hand, Equal Exchange is not a traditional company in a lot of ways. So we sort of want the thousands of small investors that other people may see, wow, this is a lot of work, explaining about what does investing mean? How do you, but that is the work we want to do. It's sort of movement building, right? And the community funding aspect of crowdfunding is the space we want to be in. I mean, we may have gotten bigger in our scope over time, but we're still sort of 110 worker owners in Massachusetts and nationally trying to do this work with farmers all over the world. So this feels like the right place to be in that regard. But I hear you, there are more options being discussed every day, which is great. This is what our economy needs and what and how people can take more ownership over things happening right outside their door.
No, I totally agree with you. That's why I'm fascinated with equity crowdfunding. I mean, really, one of the major differences between, let's say, VC or whatnot, in VC, it's a business as opposed to an individual, which means they obviously need to get returns. And what is it? 1 out of 10 maybe knocks it out of the park, that kind of thing. The nice thing about equity crowdfunding is, or should be, that most of the investments are modest, not people's life savings.
Right.
And why are they investing? If they're realistic, as much because they want to be a part of the mission. It's got, oh, damn, that's a good idea, whatever it happens to be. Well, I think that's so cool. Give them a break. It's a very American attitude, in my opinion, which I admire a great deal. And so, when one sees that, it's kind of like, wow, okay. So, if your return is relatively minimal, be thankful that you're even getting a return. Even if that doesn't sound very capitalistic, but the return, you might say, is almost as much emotional as it is financial.
Absolutely.
That is I've been in this industry since the beginning in 2016, and it is absolutely delightful to see that by now it's multi-billion, not million, dollar industry overall. So, that's, and as you say, it provides tremendous impetus specifically, in most cases anyway, for early stage startup. Doesn't apply for you guys, but that's definitely what it's about.
And I think it's also a way to bring new people into the investment fold. I mean, the folks we work with at Crowdfund Main Street are working with Crowdfund Baltimore and other sort of local banners where people that have traditionally been sort of gamed out of the investment world are finding new ways to talk about community investing and using some of these tools of capitalism, as we've been talking about, right, to reimagine how those can also work, right? And so that's exciting and interesting too, right? People taking their own hard-earned money, right, putting it into local businesses, but also co-housing. I think this idea of worker ownership and community ownership is coming back into vogue again, right? I mean, Equal Exchange has been around for so long. We've ridden the waves of, people were pretty interested in Equal Exchange investing in 2009, right? Were they not? Like, our investment was still doing well, whereas not a lot of other investments were at that time, right? So there's a long game that people are playing also. But I think just breaking down the barriers around some of the language and some of the regulation, which, as you pointed out, was designed to protect investors back in the day, but it feels like has kind of curtailed. Is that really the same motivation now, or are there other ways to do this? So the Jobs Act, crowdfunding, I think it will keep changing and evolving, and that's exciting. That's a good place to be.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. As you point out, the Jobs Act or Jumpstart Our Business Startups, was passed in 2012. But it took 4 years for the SEC to come up with the rules for equity crowdfunding. And perhaps that's not so surprising because, as you say, the primary role as the SEC is to protect investors. How the hell do you can protect an investor if a startup is barely off the ground, relatively speaking? But frankly, the risks are so high. But as a result, they did something which is totally unique. And that is that unlike any other kind of certainly equity crowdfunding, when you file the Form C, it is merely submitted. It's merely filed. It is not reviewed, meaning by the SEC. Now, don't get me wrong. The platform has a responsibility to make sure it's all complete and so forth. But wow, what a difference. So definitely, I think that in America in particular, this has been done right. And that is very, very great to see. Now, your campaign is over in about a week, give or take. And as I said, it looks like you'll be probably 500,000, something in that range by that time. Do you think you'll probably try to do another equity crowdfunding campaign down the road? Or is it?
Well, I think it's certainly been a really positive experience for us so far. I think we were gauging as much the dollars raised as the amount of people. So as you correctly said, I think we have something like, almost 150 people that have been involved in this also, which was one of our benchmarks, just as much as the funds themselves. So how are we reaching people? Is it our base, or is it new people that we're reaching? Is it physical events that you do, virtual events? How do you get the word out, right? I mean, again, that's been the most fun, is getting to talk about who we are and what we're doing, which was a constraint on prior raises. So I feel like the word is out now about what we're trying to do, and we'll keep that going. How does this match up with our other types of capital that we need for our business, right? We have lines of credit. We have the capital we have now from investors, this crowdfunding idea. It's kind of putting it all into the mix, the same way that we're not just a coffee company, right? We're a fair foods company. We're a worker co-op. We're organic. We're fair trade. We're alternative capital. We're a lot of different things, which in this day and age, you sort of have to appeal to a broad base, and somebody may find one part of Equal Exchange that they're more interested in than the other. And also, why are we here doing this work? I think, as you posed to me at the beginning, right? It's because we all have these various interests and these various skills, but not one person is more skilled or more informed than the other. That's how we are solid as a company, because we all put our own money into this venture. We put our work in every day, and we put our skills to work. And I think the mission of the work we do is what keeps us here, and the farmers that we communicate with and source from, and then all the people that are now getting involved in Equal Exchange in a different way. It feels like there's a really good energy to this work right now, and I can't see a reason why we wouldn't want to continue that.
Right. I mean, as you may be aware, Next Pitch TV is actually an aggregator of all the campaigns, even though we only showcase a small number of the campaigns that we find to be particularly worthy. But based upon what we've seen, assuming that you want to do another campaign, you should be aware that usually, if you run a second campaign on the same platform, by and large, the response, not surprisingly perhaps, tends to be a lot lower. In other words, let's say you raise $500,000 this time, and you say, well, then, let's do another $500,000. The probabilities by the second campaign, so why are we stuck at 100,000 just to make a number up? So
Sure.
if you decide to do it, you might want to consider saying, with a different platform, given you've already got your campaign, you've already got your filing from before, more or less everything you need is in place, you may want to consider moving to a different platform, if for no other reason than that it gives you additional exposure to their respective base, for what it's worth.
Okay, and thanks for your interest in Equal Exchange and giving us a chance to get the word out about what we're trying to do here.
Well, all I can tell you is I may be at heart a capitalist, but I love what you're doing, the whole vision behind it. Deeply inspiring. And I certainly hope that this will also continue. In fact, I'm sure it will.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for your support and for the platform. And yeah, I've been excited to learn more about Next Pitch and more about this environment. So this was good education for me too.
Very good. Thank you so much. Have a great day, no? Take
Wonderful.
care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And there you have it. Equal Exchange, led by the visionary Nicole Vitello, is not just a campaign. It's a movement reshaping the landscape of fair trade and empowering communities worldwide. Join us in supporting this incredible endeavor. To know more about the featured campaign, subscribe now to nextpitch.tv.